So please welcome your host for this live podcast recording. It's Rosie Wilby. Hooray! Oh, hooray! How fantastic, how exciting. Now, because this is a live podcast recording, I have to maybe do a few boring notices and then we'll do the official introduction to the podcast. But thank you, it's brilliant to see you all here. Now, the official notices that I want to say is thank you so much to the people who have shared some of their breakup stories, which we are going to feed back on and maybe give you some therapy and advice during the show. And you could be in with a chance of winning tickets to a future show or perhaps a signed copy of the Breakup Monologues book or my first book if you've already got that one. But yes, thank you for that. I also wanted to say, please, if you have your iPhones, I'm very much up for people taking photos because I love using all your images when I share the podcast. We can give you photo credits if you want a grab for stardom, but please do any little videos, any photos of when the three of us are on stage, deep in conversation, looking entirely sexy and fascinating and funny and all of those things, you know, do capture us at our best. But I'm very much encouraging of that, and do sort of tweet afterwards, tweet me at Rosie Wilby if you're still on that thing called Twitter. Some of you are on a new thing now, aren't you? The Threads, I'm on that as well. But yeah, tag me on your preferred social media platform. And I'd love to hear from you if you have taken little photos or videos or clips or whatever during the show. I'm absolutely all for that. So yes, just wanted to get those things out the way. And so let me sort of go off to the side here as if you haven't, you know, I'm still mysterious and you're thinking, what does that Rosie Wilby look like? And let me sort of go behind this little curtain. Hello. And so let's do the official introduction to the podcast, which will go out to the world. So yes, let's sort of warm up. Let's just do a little practice round of applause. So I know you're going to really give it some. Yeah. Okay. Okay, that would be perfect. Right. Hello and welcome to the Breakup Monologues, a podcast where we navigate the emotionally perilous terrain of relationship endings. Please welcome your host, Rosie Wilby. Oh, that is excellent. Thank you so much, Norwich, for coming out on Norfolk Day. Ooh, how exciting. So this is the Breakup Monologues podcast, and could you cheer for me if you have ever been dumped? Oh, you're really excited about being dumped here in Norwich. You're really feeling better off without them, aren't you? And give me a cheer if you've never been dumped and you're the person who always does the dumping. Oh, who was that? There's someone through their voice, sitting at the back. Get out. No, I'm joking. Everyone is welcome at the Breakup Monologues. We like to have a friendly, lovely chat about that weird time when we've been broken up with and we're broken-hearted and we're all over the place, but sometimes we end up reflecting and reinventing ourselves in sometimes quite positive and healthy ways, which we shall find out all about. And because of that, the subtitle of the Breakup Monologues book is The Unexpected Joy of Heartbreak, because sometimes, after a little time, it's not quite so bad as we thought it might be. I, in fact, started thinking about breakups when I was dumped by email many years ago. What do you think of that? No, you said, no. Yeah. Do you think it's rude, madam? Harsh, yes, I think so, especially after 5 years, but I did feel much better about it once I had corrected her spelling and punctuation and changed the font. Break up in wingdings is far preferable. So before I get my two fantastic guests for this first half onto the stage, I'm just going to read a little extract from the Breakup Monologues book because they're on sale in the interval and you've got to buy it. So this basically tells my story of trying to at last stay in a relationship and what I've learnt from my breakups that might actually help me to do that. Because I believe that if you've had a breakup, it does sort of force you to evolve a little bit as a human being. So it can be quite a good thing. And there's a lot of the kind of science of heartbreak and breakups, how breaking up from somebody can feel a bit like withdrawing from a drug because we've been a bit addicted to them. And you can also read about me going into a sex lab and watching erotic imagery. That was an interesting afternoon. And they do break up the clips with a control clip to calm you down in between. And that is a David Attenborough nature documentary. Yes, indeed. Sadly, they are not measuring your arousal during that. So let's just hear a little bit from the book. We're driving to a festival in girlfriend's midlife crisis car, an electric blue BMW convertible. Although the way she drives makes me wonder if you can still describe it as a midlife crisis if it ends up killing us. That would be an end-of-life crisis, and quite a crisis at that. Never mind, the sun is shining, our life is good. We have a fancy loft conversion. We go on ski holidays. We Google things like, can dog eat mange too? After 2 decades of scratching out a creative existence from gig to gig, first as a wistful indie songwriter and then as a willfully grassrootsy comedian, I now get to live like a wanker because my libido went all aspirational on me and drew me to a partner with an actual job. However, 3 months shy of our 3-year anniversary, shit has got real. Girlfriend and I have reached a refreshing level of frankness about the fact that our mutual desire has waned. We have teetered and toppled over the parapet of honeymoon bliss and fallen to the ground below, stirred from the anesthetizing effects of the sexy brain chemicals that have propelled us along thus far with relative ease. Suddenly, we're acutely aware of the careers and friends that we've neglected during the happy haze. We've reached the stage where being in a relationship with a fellow human has become a massive pain in the arse. Even though it's a largely excellent relationship that neither of us intends to leave. Repeat, we're not going to break up, not for the foreseeable, not us. In fact, it's the first time I've reached this point and not been planning a daring, dramatic escape. Counting up significant partners whom I probably would have married if it had been legally available to me all along, I'm now on to my 5th wife. That puts me on a multi-marriage par with Joan Collins. But I'm done with twisting. I think I'd like to stick. I found a funny, sexy, generous partner, even if she does have a ridiculous, knobby car. Surely if I left this one, I'd be breaking up with love altogether. It would be my end game. And it's from this position of at least wanting to stay, of accepting the maddening claustrophobia of companionship, that I want to investigate why breakups continue to compel me so much. Perhaps it's because breakups facilitate, maybe even necessitate, transformation. In the wake of a separation, our peers allow us to reinvent ourselves. The rest of the time, they like us to stay fixed so they can move around and ahead of us. But heartbreak is the golden ticket that circumvents this bullshit. Renewed and reborn, standing at the edge of the echoing canyon of our former frustrations, we shout, "This is who I am now." And we run and skip away from the parched carcasses of the old selves we've grown to hate. For me, it's been during these fleeting, liberating gaps of singledom that I've really got shit done. I recorded and released an album. I launched a boutique music PR company. I started comedy. I wrote a book. Each time I harnessed any lingering feelings of anger, sadness, and confusion and used them as energizing forces for creativity, for moving forwards with new insights into my own shortcomings and foibles. I wonder, is it possible to do that much learning and actively stay in a relationship? I hope so. It must be right, or else all long-term couples would be codependent, emotionally stunted weirdos. Hang on. Thank you very much. Now, I'm very excited this evening. I'm always particularly excited when we have a real-life couple on the show, because we might get to break them up. They seem very happy and they look very sort of sorted and together, so I think they'll be fine. But it is quite interesting when you have a couple talking about old breakups and you think, I wonder if they've shared all these stories or if new surprising things are coming up. Would any of you come and do a podcast about breakups with your real-life partner? you're not sure. I mean, maybe you wouldn't come up here in the first place because you're not desperate, needy kind of individual like the rest of us. But performers, we're an odd breed, I tell you. So, well, I'm very, very excited to have these two incredible, creative, talented performers come and share their stories with me. I hope they haven't run off after I've said all this. They are wonderful and I believe are very well loved in this neck of the woods. So please welcome Grace Petrie and Molly Naylor. Hello. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming to do this, because it is quite brave when you're a couple.
Well, yeah,
I didn't know it wasn't
until your introduction. Fucking hell.
Well, because Molly sort of roped you in, I think, didn't she? Because we were chatting on Instagram, and I said, "Oh, would Grace do it as well?" And you said, "Yeah, she'll do it." And then you tweeted saying something like, I'm not quite sure what I've agreed to do.
Well, it's just that she didn't tell me the name of it.
Really? Well, the clue is in the name.
She said, do you want to come and do this podcast with Rose Wilby? And I said, yeah, so that'd be great. And then it was a couple of weeks later that I saw the ticket link and I thought, what a way to break up with me. She's invited me. My fiancé's invited me on a podcast called The Breakup Monologues. This can't end badly.
And now my monologue.
That would be amazing. That would be a brilliant way to break up with somebody. But I don't think that was your plan, was it, Molly?
No, absolutely not, no.
No. So what we were perhaps going to talk about is some of your older breakups in the past. Because there is this idea. Actually, I just went to, just the other week, a wonderful show by the comedian Ed Byrne called Tragedy Plus Time. Because there is this idea, isn't there, that tragedy plus time equals comedy. And when something has happened that was very challenging and difficult, and we've got through that, perhaps enough time passes and we can joke about it, and perhaps depending on what sort of event it was, maybe a larger amount of time has to pass. But do you feel there are some of those moments you've had after breakups that you do sort of reflect on in a very different way now to when you were right in it, in the thick of it?
Yeah, definitely. I think I love the way you talk about it, actually, and the way you write about it, because I think it's one of those things. I think the biggest of all the pains that feels so sort of sticky when it's happening, because so much other stuff's tied up with it, like ego and rejection. And I think rejection is it's a very strong feeling, isn't it? And I think sometimes it can cloud the sort of truth of who you are and what you actually want. Sometimes I think you get rejected from something and your immediate instinct is to cling to it and go, no, I don't get rejected, because it says something about your identity, whereas actually it doesn't have to. And like, I think being rejected, the older you get, the more rejections you get in lots of different contexts. You just kind of go, well, that seems to be life. That seems to be the way things are going to happen, and I have to find a way to sort of be all right with it. So it's quite nice to be tougher about rejection. I'm not saying it's nice. It's fucking sucks, doesn't it? But I think it gets easier. What do you think?
However, no, I think that was a very zen and admirable attitude to have. I, however, am also a singer-songwriter. And I found that rather than all of that healthy processing, my way of dealing with rejection breakups has been invariably to write a fucking album about it. So often, actually, it's interesting when you're talking about timing there, because somebody once broke up with me while I was on tour. And
They weren't in the audience?
No.
Wasn't from the audience.
Yeah, it was a really bad gig.
You're shit and you're dumped.
I tell you what, I have had, there was somebody I had a fling with who, whilst I was on stage, decided that she didn't like me anymore. She wasn't into me anymore because I was so different on stage and off stage, and she really liked the kind of on stage where I was being funny and confident and all of the things that you try to perform when you are a performer. And she was like, yeah, but Rosie's so different off stage. And she couldn't kind of marry those two things. But yeah, anyway.
Well, no, I mean, it was over the phone, and I was on tour at the moment, and I sort of wrote this song about it very quickly, and then I performed it sort of that night. So it was really, really like, fresh and raw, and then it was out there in the world. Do you know when you've got that feeling like when you sort of performed something for the first time, and it's like, well, I've sort of released it now, and it's gone wild, and I sort of can't take it back. And then I was sort of doing it every night on tour, and then we were sort of counting. I'm from Leicester. I was living in Leicester at the time, and the gig in Leicester was near the end of the tour, and I started realizing with every day that it was counting down. So there was this line in the song about sex, and I started to realize I was just counting down the days until my parents were going to hear it. At the Leicester show, and then they would know that I've done it, So sometimes I think it should be tragedy plus time. Tragedy and no time can really stitch you up.
Well, I mean, sex between women doesn't count, though, does it?
What do they do?
Just pillow fights. That's all we've ever done.
Doesn't exist, right?
Yeah. The trouble I find with Grace's songs, since you asked, is
gotta go.
that she writes so beautifully about heartbreak and about endings, and like less so about like everything's nice and fine with Molly Naylor.
Yeah.
And
That would be a really good song. I'm really glad I asked you about this. Yeah.
So it's like, what do I have to break up with her in order to get a song, or is there a way?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I think you do, because we're gonna get this to happen, aren't we, guys? No, I think you do, because we often write about the really difficult roller coaster moments, whereas stability, whilst we need it and we crave it, and we couldn't endlessly live like this on sort of highs and lows. And there's a lovely comedian friend of mine who once said that her ex had said to her, well, our relationship was like a series of sort of dips and troughs. And she said, do you mean peaks and troughs? And her ex said, no. But we couldn't sustain that roller coaster. So we do want that lovely stability. But because we're not going through the same emotions, we're not sort of in this heightened state, it doesn't necessarily trigger creativity in the same way. You probably must feel the same with your writing and shows.
I do, actually, and I've tried to write love poems in the moment, and they can just feel a bit trite or a bit sort of generic. So if anyone is getting married and wants me to write them a poem for their wedding, don't ask me, because it's really horrible, actually.
Yeah. Although interestingly, I did when I was a singer-songwriter back in the day, not so wonderfully as you, Grace, but back in the day, people asked me to stop and just talk instead. But I did have this love song called You Amaze Me that everybody used to love. And this girl who sang backing vocals in my band, she asked me to sing it at her wedding. But the really awkward thing about that was that actually I was secretly in love with her. And so it was sort of weird, because I was singing it at this woman's wedding, like looking at her husband and my girlfriend at the time was singing it with me. She used to sing backing vocals with it, and I was singing it to this woman that I had a big crush on. So it was a bit of a weird...
Yeah, that doesn't count. Because that's really actual love and heartbreak at the same time.
Yeah.
And the gayest thing I've ever heard. Crikey.
I know, we love a straight girl, don't we? We can't...
Let me point you to 5 Grace Petrie albums about it, mate. No, I'm cured of that though. I did used to write a lot of songs about straight girls, but now I'm marrying a big old queer, aren't I? So,
big old bi.
Big old bi.
Big old bi. And have you always identified as bi?
No, not really. I come from a town where it was a very sort of homophobic vibe in my hometown growing up in the 90s.
Well, most towns were in the 90s.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, like no shade on Falmouth. Like it's very sort of like, it's full of gays now, but at the time it was just so I think it wasn't even that I was like secretly queer and hiding it, which I feel quite lucky that wasn't really my experience. But I think I was just sort of subconsciously going like, nah, you just enjoy hanging out with her 24/7. Do you know what I mean? And so, yeah, and then it was only later actually when I was sort of in my late 20s that I started feeling like, or in my 20s I was like, yeah, maybe, but I was in like series of like 2-year relationships with men. And then I had this like vague sense that I was bisexual, but I was like not practicing as a bisexual. and then
Sounds religious, doesn't it?
And then it was very religious when it actually happened. And then, yeah, I think after there was a point where I broke up with like the final kind of like 2-year man, and then I was like, do you know what, this bisexuality thing? Because I realised I didn't look very typically queer, and like I felt like I either have to like get a shaved bit, or I have to start putting it out there that you know what I mean? And so the first night I like casually mentioned it in a group of people. The next day, like one of the women in that group messaged me, and I was like, this is so much easier than I thought. You just sort of say it, and then, yeah, so then I've just been banging on about it for the last 10 years.
Oh, well, great, fantastic.
Yeah.
And how long have you been with the lovely Grace?
Like three and a bit years?
Yeah, more than 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, more than 3 years.
Yeah. Well, it was early in the pandemic, really. So
so how did it start?
We had a very, very long telephone courtship for months and months when we couldn't
But
see
we
each other.
actually did meet in Norwich.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did, yeah.
City of Love.
It's the city of love, and the city of failed Labour politics at the time. Because we were both booked to do, well, Grace was doing these shows at the time to support the Labour movement and Jeremy Corbyn and things like that from the past. And we were doing a gig for the wonderful Karen Davies, who was trying to like unseat the Norwich Conservative, and so yeah, we were both like booked to perform at this night, and we had a few mutual friends, so it was like a comedy thing of going like, oh, I can't wait to meet that person. And then we met, didn't we?
We met, and so Molly was at the bar in front of me, and I heard somebody sort of referring to her, calling her by name, and I thought, oh, I think that's Molly Naylor. And then she turned around, and I was like, whoa, that's Molly Naylor. Molly Naylor's really fit. And then I made no impression on her whatsoever.
Well, I was seeing someone
zero.
else at the time, so this was like in the October before COVID, and then
So you had to have a breakup.
yeah. So then I had a little breakup in like January, and then all ready for when the pandemic struck, and I was alone in my house, just going like, okay, let's get out the old, see what's going on online, see who's, and then Grace was doing these songs. She was doing like these cover songs every day, the A to Z of covers, and I was just like being a real reply guy and just like liking them and stuff. And then one day I decided to make a request. So I said, oh, if you do I'm on Fire by Bruce Springsteen on I'd really like it.
Sorry. I'm
Are you
so
correcting
sorry.
the story?
Yes, citation needed. That's not quite what she said. She said, if you do I'm on Fire by Bruce Springsteen for I will explode and die in 1,000 horny ghosts. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, yeah, no, this was a DM. This was a fucking public tweet, guys. This was for the whole world to see that.
I've just got a quirky tone online, you know, that's the kind of thing I fire out. And then, so it gets to I Day, I'm thinking, it's possible. Yeah. No, it's all coming back to me now. I'm like, okay, fuck that. And then I like have a bath, move on with my life. But then the next morning, she'd sent it at midnight, but I got it the next morning, and she sent me like a private video of her singing I'm on Fire by Bruce Springsteen. And I remember I was like lying in bed watching it, just like idly scrolling, and I got this video, watched it, and then I leapt out of bed, and I was just stood in my bedroom going, oh my God, 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 and then like watched it another like 100 times, and then like texted some friends being like, what does this mean? This thing has just happened. What does this mean? What does it? And they were like, it means sex. That's what it means. You're going to have sex at some. But I was like, but we can't because it's the lockdown, and then we couldn't. But then what we could do is speak on the phone for like 5 hours a day, which we started doing.
Which we did for months, and I mean 5 hours a day. So it was crazy because it was definitely the best like falling in love I think either of us have ever had, because we just would have these amazing conversations. You know, it was a really gorgeous. You know, some bad stuff happened, but it was a really gorgeous time to be falling in love with someone, because it was like. I meant some bad stuff happened with the coronavirus. I didn't mean some bad stuff happened with us.
In the world.
In the world. It was. The world wasn't crushing it in early 2020, but like, it was a really gorgeous time to be falling in love, because, you know, we just had all of this time. Like, both of our jobs had been completely interrupted. Oh. So we were just kind of able to just really bask in, like, getting to know each other and get to know each other for months and months and months and months, and then eventually sort of kind of face the fact that if we didn't have sex, it was going to be awful, because we just sort of knew everything about each other, and we were like, oh God, if we meet up and we don't fancy each other now, I guess we'll just have to be best friends forever.
And we told each other all our breakup stories as well, so I feel like I probably know all of yours, but maybe I don't. I'm not sure.
Oh, well, we'll have to test that out. I certainly like the idea that, you know, I think sticking to the theory that somehow good things can come out of terrible things. I think the pandemic did make us pause for a moment and think about our lifestyles and how hectic they are, and some people changed their routines up a bit, or changed jobs, or thought about working from home or working more flexibly. I mean, we seem to have gone back to just full-on chaos and answering messages and things all of the time and staring at our phones. But I do think it did make people think about getting out into nature and really appreciating that in a different way. So, yes, you're right, there was horrible stuff going on, but I think there were some people enjoying some form of connection with other people or with themselves, even despite the very peculiar circumstances. But let's find out about these breakup stories then. What did you want to share with us, Molly? Is there anything sort of eventful in your breakup past? What was the first one that you told Grace? I think this one, I don't think I actually did tell her until the other day when we were talking about this. And I told some friends when we were in France. And the reason I told them, not because I thought it was a hilarious story, but I'm still to this day confused about what happened. And I feel like I'll never know. Maybe you can shed some light on it. So what happened was, I wasn't even seeing this guy. There was this guy who was around. You know when you haven't like shagged anyone for ages and you're just like looking at who's around? Don't judge me. That is a thing. And so he was around and I was around for him. And there wasn't like huge fireworks and chemistry, it didn't feel like. But I think we liked each other as people and we were both sort of around. And so I sensed that there's maybe a little bit of something that could happen. And then one night, we kissed, but it was really windy, I remember. He was like stood outside my house. And then he like kissed me really in this very shy way. And then just sort of like, the way I remember it's like he sort of dissolved into the wind. That's not the breakup. But yeah, but then like loads of time went by and it was like Christmas and all this. So it didn't get much momentum going. Neither of us were like messaging. So it was a bit shit, but like there was still this hope that maybe something would happen. So on a less windy day.
On a less windy day, perhaps. And so anyway, we were going to we finally were going to see each other again, and we were like, going to go, I think we were going to see a band, or we were going to go to an art centre not dissimilar to this one, in a different city. I'm trying to protect anonymity. It was here. And so we were going to go to this gig, but he was like, let's go for dinner beforehand. And I was like, dinner, finally. Proper date. That's actually really nice. Like, this is going to show us if something's going to happen. So we go for this dinner. First red flag, he only orders chips. Do you know what I mean? A mini red flag, but I can get over it. So we're having this dinner and like having a glass of wine, and it's all really nice.
And he's just having chips.
He's just having his chips. I'm having like probably a baked camembert, you know, a rack of lamb, just like getting up, you know.
He's just having a casual chips for Maine, as you
chips
do.
for Maine. And so then he clears his throat, and he says, I need to tell you something. And then he says, so for a while now, I've had you sort of earmarked as someone in this city, similar size to Norwich, as someone that I like. And I thought, that's something, isn't it? That's like... Yeah.
We all like to be earmarked.
We all like to be earmarked. And then he said, but there's a problem. Oh. It's like a film, isn't it? It's a bit of conflict. You've got to have conflict for a good story. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, the problem is there's someone else who I've also earmarked, who I also
that's
like.
Special then. Oh.
And then he went, so what do you think? And I did not know what was happening. I just blacked out, and I was like, this is so weird. But I knew I was sort of being dumped. I was being pre-dumped before anything had happened. I was like, I think I'm being rejected, and that's sort of okay. I felt weird. I felt rejected, so I said, do you know what? It's fine. Pick her. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, I'm not the one for you. I'm just a good time gal. This other gal sounds really solid. And I was just improvising. I didn't know what I was saying because I was so blindsided. And so anyway, then he was like, oh, okay. And I went to the bathroom and felt a bit like bummed out and like, oh. And then we walked to this event. And like there was going to be some other people there, and so I was like, it's fine, I'm going to sort of lose him at this event. And so I did, and I saw my friend at the bar, and I was like, weird thing just happened. And then I looked over, and behind her, he was talking to his friend, and she was like embracing him, and he looked really sad. So I was like, have I just been dumped, or have I just dumped him? And I'll never know. And yeah. Oh. What do you think?
What do you think?
Was I dumped or did I dump?
Cheer if you think Molly dumped him.
Yes.
Cheer if you think Molly got dumped.
I think so too.
Why do you sound so stoked about it, you guys?
I guess that's him.
Him! Whoa! Plot twist!
What happened?
You just been for your chips.
There he is.
It's not windy now. Come on, let's thrash this out. But yeah, so bizarre. One of those ones where you don't care that much, but like it sticks in your mind because you're like, what the fuck?
I wonder,
happened?
was he angling for like a non-monogamous kind of situation?
He seems the most like monogamous person that I've ever known. Do you know?
Right,
He had a very monogs vibe, very like very monogs vibe. But
I think he was just wanting to be fought for.
Yeah, he
by
wanted me
one
to be
of
like,
those
pick
he'd
me.
earmarked. Yeah, I think so. I think the what do you think was the moment for you to go, well, of course it's you. It's always been you.
Yeah.
But instead you were like, I'm a good time gal. Get out of here. So,
hang on, let me just take this camembert. See you later. So yeah, it was very bizarre and not very heartbreaky, but just confusing.
Yeah, that's really, really confusing. I do find that odd. Grace, have you got any confusing stories, heartbreaking stories? What do you want to share and get off your chest today?
well, yeah, no, I do have confusing ones that I'm still pretty confused about years later, I suppose. On the way down here, I was trying to think about the things that I could talk about. The last time I've been on a podcast once before and talked about an ex. And what I didn't foresee happening is that she listened to it and texted me. So I'm going to try and anonymise it a bit more than I did that time. But
did this take place in a city not dissimilar to Norwich?
It was in a place called Mester City. No. Well, yeah. What can I talk about? I was trying to think about whether or not I would talk about the time that I've been dumped a lot. I was one of the people that cheered for always getting dumped, and I was trying to think about what have I got that's kind of funny in there. I mean, I once was with somebody for a year and a half. And she told me once we were out for dinner, in the middle of dinner, and I was sort of telling her that I loved her, and she said, "Yeah, I feel like I'm not as into you as I used to be." And it was Valentine's Day. I know. So that I probably won't go into much on that one. I guess there was somebody that I just went on a couple of dates with, and it was one of those things. If you've ever had a very short-term thing where somebody sort of seems like one thing, and then suddenly seems like another thing altogether, like a week later. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. And I went on sort of one date with this person, this woman, and she was a member of the Green Party. And I thought, well, tick, right? I'm very sort of left-wing, and most of my songs, the ones that aren't about straight girls, are about politics. I sing a lot about left-wing politics, so it's kind of, you can't really know me without knowing that, left-wing is a big thing for me. So I kind of, checked that out early doors, and she's a member of the Green Party, and I thought, well, great, right? that's sorted. And then we had this first date, and she was quite rude to the waiter.
Oh,
That's not very Green Party, is it? And
Mean Party, more like.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was trying to go for a Caroline Luke ass, but no. Thank you. 2 people in the front row, and in my crowd. And so she was rude to the waiter, and I thought, that's really kind of sat badly with me, but I thought, well, maybe she was nervous, whatever, onwards and upwards. And then we had this first date, and everything was kind of fine. And then we had the second date booked for the following weekend, and in between times she went abroad for work. And we sort of kept in touch on the phone during the week. And one of the phone calls that we had, she phoned me up, and she said, "How are you?" And I said, I'm really pissed off. I just watched Question Time, and I think Nigel Farage had been on, and they were talking about people drowning in the Channel, right, trying to reach the UK, and she said, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah, the thing is, the world needs inequality to function." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, it's just that, whenever they've tried equality, it hasn't worked." And I was like, when have they fucking tried equality? I missed that memo.
Yeah.
When did we have the era of equality that just went to fucking pieces, and we thought, no, we better go back to capitalism, actually, because this is awful. And she was an academic, and I didn't go to university. And in the course of this argument, she said, "Look, when I see you, I'll explain it in a way you can understand."
Bye-bye.
And you would think, wouldn't you, good people of Norwich, that would be enough for me to cancel that second day, right? And you'd be wrong, right? You'd be wrong. I still thought I'd give it the old college try, right? Not that I'd know anything about the college try, not having good students. So we had the second date, and she showed up.
She had a little present for you, didn't she?
She had a little present for me, and she came in with this jar of sand, and I said, "What's with the jar of sand?" And she said, "This is from the beach in Spain, because of how much I wished you were there with me." And then she wanted to sleep with me, and I pretended I had a tummy ache, and that was the end of Green Party Jar of Sand, as she will forever be known.
Well, there we are.
Yeah.
I mean, at least you managed to get out of it.
Indeed. And I want to say, I don't think it is Green Party policy that the world needs inequality to function. I think that was just her going rogue
Yes,
But,
I don't think there's necessarily a link there. Well, let's move on, if you will, to one or two stories that have been contributed by the audience. Oh, cheer if you popped in a story in the books. Oh, well, there's more stories than just one person, so I know a few of you did, even though you're not. And you see, you can get feedback from our expert panel.
Here we go.
We've become relationship therapists.
Okay.
Well,
Don't fuck it up.
I did one of these podcasts, and there were, bizarrely, a load of relationship therapists in the front row taking notes, which is a worry, isn't it?
That is a worry.
Yeah. This person says, a memorable breakup was when I was on holiday with my girlfriend in 1999 in Xanthi, I think it is. Is that in Greece? The person who might have written this? I'd paid for the holiday for both of us with the first credit card I'd been approved for when I got my first job as a newly qualified nurse. She dumped me on holiday 5 days into the fortnight because it was different being on holiday with me compared to her ex.
Oh.
We
hate
stayed
that.
on the holiday sharing a room for the rest of the holiday. To top it all, I got a horrible skin infection as well. Oh, I'm so sorry about your holiday experience. I've heard that there are some travel insurers that will cover the cost of a call to a relationship therapist if you break up on holiday.
Is that true?
Well, I heard that's something I heard. Yeah. Have you ever had a breakup on holiday?
Yes, in a cabin in Wales. Do you know what I mean?
Was it raining?
Of course it was
Of
raining.
course it was raining.
And like a cabin in Wales, when you're like, falling in love, that sounds romantic, and then it turns into a horror film, doesn't it? When it's not love time. And then we spent ages just sort of talking about the reasons we couldn't be together, and it was just absolute dog shit. Yeah. But I think holidays do shine a light, don't they? Because I think it's like a little mini kind of, what would it be like if we lived together? What would it be like if we didn't see anybody else? What would it be like if I didn't go to work for 8 hours and then come home? It's just like, so this is it, me and you. And I think, when it's me and Grace, that's really nice. But when it's, I think it just shows you who you are and who they are.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of peaks in divorce rates and breakup rates are often when people have spent time together. So it is often, it's often in January, isn't it? After the Christmas holidays, because you think, it's too mean to break up with them at Christmas. I'll get them a nice Christmas present, and then I'll break up with them in the new year. That'll be kinder. Although bizarrely, there's actually a graph you can find online of peak breakup times throughout the year, according to Facebook status updates. And one peak is on April Fool's Day, which I thought would leave people confused, wouldn't it?
I think I'm so arrogant. I'd just be like, nah.
Good one.
I'd be like, good one. It'd have to really wait
joke.
till after 12 o'clock and then be like, are you fucking serious?
But yeah, it's tough when you end up having to spend the rest of the holiday together.
I know someone who travelled around for 6 months with a partner, and they split up 2 weeks in, and they planned the whole thing. Travelled world, backpack around Asia. So yeah, they're not friends now.
That's hard. Yeah. I spoke to somebody on this podcast, Faye Tracy, musical comedian, who she got dumped on the flight over to the States to go out and see the person that she was having a bit of a thing with, and he dumped her while she was on the way out there.
Wow!
So she just had to go and have like an amazing holiday all on her own and sort of reclaim her own kind of single identity.
To think you didn't even used to be able to get Wi-Fi. She would have had to wait till she got there in the old days.
Yeah, you used to have to turn your phone right off, didn't you?
Wow.
Anyway, these stories are really gay, actually.
I'm out.
Something about the demographic on stage
I
that invites that. I don't know what it is.
I don't know why we seem to have attracted a lot of women who seem to like having relationships with women. I can't understand why they've all come along this evening, but welcome. It's lovely to have you here. One girlfriend, this person, I think it is anonymous, one girlfriend I lived with who I still had to live with after we broke up. You see, this is people who've had to spend time together after they break up. After we broke up, until we could find somewhere else to live, refused to feed our jointly owned kitten. What?
Wow.
When I went away for the weekend.
More of a dog person, I suppose. Fair enough.
When they weren't there, that's even worse.
Yeah,
They was effectively starving this kitten.
That's a hostage cat,
absolutely.
isn't it? That is like...
because when the kitten is quite young, it needs feeding quite regularly.
I mean, I hate to break it to you, Rosie, but when they grow up, you need to feed them as well, to be
no,
honest.
you do. No, but what I mean is when they're little, they need more regular.
They do, yeah,
they
they
need
do.
a little
lot,
feeds,
yeah.
don't they? You know.
What a monster.
She claimed that because I'd said I'd paid for the cat food, I had full responsibility.
That's even worse.
Yeah. Is that person's ex here? Terrible. The cat starver. This is terrible. Now, there's one piece of paper I got very confused about because there's obviously maybe the Green Party are in because they've all written on the same piece of paper.
Oh,
Like they've tried to save papers.
that's very Norwich.
Do you think they're all like a polyamorous relationship?
Oh, yeah, could be.
It's just they're all writing about the same person that they broke up with.
Yeah. Actually, because my first book, which appealed to the poly community because it was called Is Monogamy Dead, which I was inspired to write about monogamy when I heard in many surveys around 50% of people confess to cheating, which I thought is quite interesting because if you're in a monogamous relationship and you're not cheating, better look closely at your partner, hadn't you? Yeah, the annoying thing about that was that obviously if people were in a relationship with about 5 or 6 other people, they'd all just share the one copy of the book round everybody rather than all flipping buying their own copy. So it was a horror for book sales.
Yeah, that is a killer.
Yeah. So maybe this polyamorous group have all written on the same piece of paper, but we've got time for maybe a couple of these. I wanted to stay and become an English teacher in France, but because teachers in France are civil servants, I couldn't become an English teacher because I'm English. He chose to stay in France. I came back to do a PGCE. Haven't seen for 40 years.
40?
Wow.
Cool.
And this other person says, I really liked him, but didn't like how serious it got. I wanted to stay, but I wanted to leave. Oh. I was worried about his ex, who he said he was over. Oh, well, you see, if people just say too much about how they're over their ex.
Yeah, you shouldn't need to say it,
yeah.
should you? It
I'm
should be
definitely over my ex. Absolutely, definitely. He and I drove round in his car and made memories. Oh. Made memories.
It's called dogging, where we...
We were excited about me getting my driver's license. Yeah. Excited about the dogging, come on. I now have it, but not him.
Nice.
Oh, so that's lovely.
Actually, one of our first... can I tell this story about...
Yes.
Oh.
I say yes. What do we think?
So we had this long telephone relationship, and months we couldn't see each other, and then finally lockdown started to ease, and then we could meet up with each other, and Molly loves outdoor swimming, and she came to visit me in Leicester, and I said there's this beautiful spot that I've never been to myself, but I've heard that it's absolutely amazing for outdoor swimming. And we got there, and the first thing we saw was some doggers.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
I've
just
forgotten
saw
about that.
a man's naked ass.
It was a
outside
particularly
car.
rank dogging. Like I feel like some dogging's probably quite romantic, but this dogging was just like a penis through a window situation.
It was a real like budget hotel option of dogging.
It was very
mean?
Leicester.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I feel like in Norwich it's different.
Yes, what would it be in Norwich? It wouldn't be like that.
Oh, it'd just be like a couple of people like having a picnic and some soup. And
Yeah, a few
just,
chips,
like,
you think?
inviting some other people to join them.
Want to be careful with that hot soup, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Sorry for slagging. I do actually love Leicester.
No, it's fine. You won. I moved here. Maybe we will break up. Tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be single.
And I mean, if my wife's listening in, who knows what's happening. So It's funny you were saying about growing up in a homophobic town, because I grew up in this place called Ormskirk in the northwest, which I always say is a bit like Liverpool if you take away everything. And so I didn't think I could be a lesbian because I was a teenager in the 1980s, and yes, I'm very old. And so the only lesbian I knew about, I didn't know her, but I knew about, was Martina Navratilova. And I did not think I was good enough at tennis. Because we didn't really have queer women role models at all, did we? Although I did, one evening when my parents had gone out, I rang the Samaritans because I felt so alone. And the funny thing is, they said, "Don't worry, Rosie." You know, I thought I was the only lesbian, just me and Martina Navratilova, this very sort of daunting athlete that, you know, would never meet or become friends with Martina Navratilova. And they said, "Don't worry, Rosie, there is another lesbian. There is another lesbian. Pat Butcher." And I was very comforted by that. I was okay after that. But I mean, it is hard, isn't it, when you're trying to have relationships and there are no real role models. I don't know what you think, Grace. I think in some ways, if you've thought outside the box about traditional relationship narratives, it can maybe help you later on. But it is extra difficult, I think, in that early stage when you're first dating and when you're sort of, you know, finding your way into a bi identity. I think it adds an extra element, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so, and I think you know, I would say maybe like particularly having sort of always been quite butch in the way that I identify and the way that I sort of present to the world. You know, there was definitely, I just never saw any butch women ever anywhere. You know, and when there were the very tiny flashes of sort of queer characters on TV, you know, Pat Butcher, our Lord and Saviour. You know, or, you know, I think there was very early in sort of Friends, you know, like Ross Geller's ex-wife was sort of a lesbian in Friends, but it was things like that I would see, and it was always extremely feminine women, right, that were in relationships with each other. And when I was a kid, that really messed me up. That was the thing that messed me up a lot more, actually, than knowing that I was gay. I knew that I was gay from a really young age, and I was very blessed, actually, that I also knew that my family were going to be totally okay with it, so it didn't really cause me massive worries. But I had this huge sense that, well, I remember thinking this basically all through my childhood and my teens, really. I remember thinking, well, if you're straight and you're a girl, then you fancy boys. And if you're gay and you're a girl, you fancy girls that look like girls. And I don't look like a girl, so no one's going to fancy me. And that was something that was my reality for years and years and years. And then it wasn't until, you know, I was pretty old when I first saw anyone in the real world who sort of looked like me. And now, of course, I know that actually there's loads and loads and loads of gender non-conforming queer people, and they're just not really put in on those platforms and on those stages and on those screens, and like it's getting a little bit better. But, you know, I think actually I sort of had this really bizarre sense for years that I was this like absolute unique, almost alien example of queerness because of the way that I look. And, you know, obviously I know so many butch and, you know, non-binary and gender non-conforming, you know, queer people of all stripes. So, you know, I think that is something that hopefully is getting a little bit better. But I remember that being a real, you know, sort of obstacle to me imagining that I could ever have any kind of romantic life, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
Well, we probably haven't got very long before we need to have a bit of an interval and wrap up this episode. But have you got a little breakup story, Molly, to finish off with?
The first time I was ever dumped, I was like 18, and it was, I think, since then, I think that it was so heartbreaking, but in a way that I couldn't process because my family didn't talk about feelings ever, really. So I had nothing to do with it. So I had to just pretend that I was fine, which I think, was really damaging. And I remember like telling my parents in this really like casual way, just like, this has happened, some information you might need to know, and then just kind of carrying on. And then I remember cooking for my parents that night. I think it was this like, I was like doing this performance that I was like totally fine. So I like cooked them this meal, and then I remember like there was this sense, I could feel there was some kind of like compassion coming off them in waves, but not words. And I remember we were just sort of silent, and then my dad, I'd cooked some kind of like breaded cod, and I was 18, do you know what I mean? I was like breaded cod and some oven chips, but like I'd cook this, and then I remember
more chips. You did have something with the chips.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not a monster. And I remember like into the silence, my dad just going, nice piece of fish, Mol. And I think that was him saying so much, but like that's all he had, and I think that's okay. Well, obviously it was, very inadequate. But there was something sweet about it, so.
My parents have also historically not been great about talking about these things. And Molly is actually not the first Molly I've ever been in a relationship with. I have another.
There was me, and then there was bad Molly from the past.
As she shall forever be known now. And a very, very dear friend of mine had a baby a couple of years ago. This was before we were together, actually. And I had this ex who, it ended very badly with, called Molly. And my friend called me up and said, we were thinking about naming the baby Molly, but wanted to check that was okay. And I said, yeah, that's really sensitive, that's really thoughtful. And I relayed this story to my mum, and I said, don't you think that was really thoughtful of Tim to ask that? And she said, well, if those are the rules, you'd have no names left. So you can always rely on her for a comforting word.
Patsy Petrie.
Yeah. So for any name, there's always someone who's been a right bellend. Yeah. Right, okay. Well, there we are. What a note to end on, everybody. So, please do take photos of us looking fabulous and sexy before we depart the stage. But I hope, have you enjoyed this episode of the Breakup Monologues? Woo! Well, please do keep in touch. I'm on Twitter at Rosie Wilby. I'm on Instagram at Breakup Monologues. Grace, you're coming back here soon with a show.
Yeah, I am actually. So I wrote a show largely about what I was talking about butcherness. It's called Butcher Do About Nothing, and it's here at the Norwich Arts Centre on August the later in the year.
August something.
I'll find out. I'll ad-lib. I'll find out.
Yes. Well, also to say that I dotted around some pink flyers for the Breakup Monologues, which have the Instagram handle on, but ignore the dates on it. They're old London dates, because those were flyers that were created during the pandemic for dates that didn't even happen. But I just thought I'd leave them out as a sort of calling card for our WordPress site and our Instagram. I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love you to go and check out all the archive, because has anyone actually listened to the Breakup Monologues podcast? A few people over there, you see, but the rest of you, there's loads and loads of episodes online. I'd love you to go and listen to them all. Fabulous comedians, people like Zoe Lyons, Shapi Corsandi, Richard Herring has been on. Lots of amazing, amazing people, even some clever scientists who tell me all about the sort of science of heartbreak and how it works and how we can perhaps go about recovering and feeling a bit better about things after a while. So, but also the important thing that I need to share is this is the first podcast I've done since we've been nominated for a British Podcast Award. Oh, wow! Well, it's the first one I've done since we've been nominated this time, because we have been nominated before. But it's the first time we've done since we've been nominated in 2023. And what I've been really lax about is asking people to give the podcast a rating or a review on your preferred podcast platform. And we've only got these on, like Apple Podcasts, we've only got these few random reviews. And one of them is for an entirely different podcast. So if you are somebody who goes on your iPhone or your other type of phone that I don't really understand, and you can rate a podcast or review it or leave some comments, then I would really encourage you to do that, because the judges for the podcast awards will be looking at these kind of things and they'll see that I haven't had a review for ages. So do say you had a wonderful time at Norwich Arts Centre, or, tweet and say you had a wonderful time. All that kind of stuff would be really helpful just now while the judges are kind of deciding whether to give me an award. I can't actually afford to go to the ceremony because it costs like about £300. But never mind. It would be great to win an award, because I've been doing this thing for a little while, and it's actually really, really fun, and some people have said it's actually helped them, and some people have come along with their ex and it's helped them to be friends and all that kind of stuff, which is lovely. Now, Grace, have you remembered when your date is?
Yes, organically.
By the magic of the internet.
18th of August, I'll be here. It's called Butchered About Nothing. And I don't know when this is going out, but I may as well say to the listeners at home that it's a UK tour, so I'll be coming all over the place. And oh, Molly,
that's the dogging after the show, is it?
Oh God. But
yes,
I'm doing a tour dogging of the UK.
That's the next tour title.
How far we've come from me being afraid of my parents knowing I've had sex. And I'll be performing all over the UK and doing some dates in Ireland as well in November.
And it would be really good if they sold out, because we have a little old wedding to save up for, so that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah. A little party to plan.
Cheeky, but I meant it.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Oh, fantastic. And Molly, anything you need to plug? Are you going to be going on tour dogging as well?
I don't know. I don't think so. I'm just going to be enjoying my life, dogging at home. Yeah, not monetising it.
We don't like to mix our dogging. You've got to keep some mystery.
Exactly.
We'll just find you in a lay-by in Norwich with your soup.
Yeah, that's the secret to a good relationship, is separate dogging. Didn't think we'd end up here, to be honest.
It's all very modern, isn't it? Well, Norwich Arts Centre, I hope you've had a wonderful time. We're going to be recording another episode in about 10-15 minutes, so I hope you're all warmed up and ready for that. But in between, go and have a lovely drink. If you'd like to get me to sign a rude message or a lovely message to your ex, or in fact, I can sign a message breaking up with your partner for you if you're trying to give them a message in one of my books. I've got one copy of my first book, Is Monogamy Dead? So somebody can buy that if you want. But please do come and say hello, and do go and have a lovely interval and come back for another episode in about 10-15 minutes. Please give it up for our two wonderful guests, Grace Petrie and Molly Naylor.